welcome to everybody. Today's session is called Manage Your Triggers and Anxiety with Ease. My name is Jennifer Norman. I'm the founder of the Human Beauty Movement. We're also known as the HBM. The HBM is all about radical self-love, radical self-acceptance, and radical self-expression. We know that beauty is an inside job, and that's why we bring you these valuable sessions to help support your mind, body, and soul's well-being. I'm honored to introduce you to our host, Kimberly Berry. Kimberly is an award-winning leadership, mental health, and business consulting coach. She has helped thousands of professionals get their lives on track, and today she's going to guide us on ways to manage our response to stress. So thank you, Kimberly. You now have the floor.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jen. I love being here. And gosh, I can talk about anxiety till my head pops off. It's just something that I love talking about, especially in this post-pandemic world. A lot of people who never had anxiety before, all of a sudden are starting to feel this thing that they don't quite understand. And so I'm really excited to be here and to talk about that. We'll have a Q&A at the end, so I can try to answer your questions or point you into the direction of answers and resources. I know a lot, but I don't know everything. But I will try to get all the questions answered and whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I made a little presentation. Okay, perfect. So, managing your triggers and anxiety with ease is the topic of today. I thank you for the intro. I have coached over 2,000 clients at this point. I'm IPEC certified. I've been coaching for a long time. I've worked with celebrities, soccer moms, TV personalities alike. So I've kind of been there, done that, and I absolutely love the work that I do. I'm going to bring up the chat right here so I can just keep an eye on it. Today, what we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering all this lovely, juicy information here. So actually, try to put it right there. So what we're going to cover is flight, fright, freeze. For anybody who's not familiar with what that is, we'll kind of give you a high overview so you can understand it. And part of that also is to self-identify, to find out, do I flight, fight, or freeze? Because understanding your anxiety response is really important. Or if you have a loved one that has anxiety, I also kind of, put information in here. So if you're not the person who's suffering from anxiety, but your loved one is, then you can help them with what they're going through. So we've got some flight, fright, freeze. We've got some physical cues and symptoms. A lot of people don't understand that there's a huge biological component to anxiety. It's not just psychological. And usually we get our biological signs before we even recognize it cognitively, like, oh, this is anxiety. So things that you can be looking out for. The amygdala, the amygdala. I always like when I spell it out, I'm all amygdala because the word does not look like how it sounds. The role of the amygdala and your anxiety, so what's happening in the brain and how that interacts with your nervous system. There's two systems that are affected by anxiety. The first is the amygdala, it gets activated or triggered. And the second is your nervous system. So that's the biological component of anxiety. The role of tolerance, so building up what we call distress tolerance to help reduce anxiety. Talking about triggers and why it's important to know your triggers. And then I'm going to give you some tools, some practical tools that you can take away from this workshop and apply immediately to your anxiety. It's, just a few tools. It's not a comprehensive list, but it'll at least give you something that you can apply in your life immediately to help you with anxiety. And then some two must-haves. If there's somebody who's really struggling with your anxiety, I want you to, have a more overarching, kind of comprehensive structure to help you really set your life up, be proactive to set your life up for success. Because we're here probably because we have felt anxious and we don't like the way that feels. And that's okay. We can say, no, this is a little uncomfortable, and anxiety is supposed to be uncomfortable. So what is anxiety, right? We talked about it being a biological and physiological response, psychological response to a perceived threat. So if there's any trigger that comes in and we perceive it to be a danger or threat, regardless if it really is or not, our anxiety can be activated. There's a difference between our stress response and anxiety. You're going to start to see anxiety pop up, and or could be panic attacks and things like that when our stress response is overloaded. When we've hit our stress limit, then we kind of creep into this place of anxiety. We're like, uh-oh, the system's overloaded. And now we're going to start having these bigger responses. Stress is something that we manage in our prefrontal cortex, our front brain, our smart brain. That's, the developed brain. Our anxiety originates from our limbic system, which is in the back of our brain. It's more of our caveman brain. So these two responses, although they can look similar, they're activated in different parts of our brain. And when our limbic system goes online, so does our nervous system. And that's why with anxiety, you can't just snap out of it, because your nervous system's being activated. Most people look at it as a psychological response, and they don't calm down the nervous system or try to calm down the nervous system or think the nervous system is activated. But actually, to calm your anxiety, one of the best things you can do is first deactivate your nervous system before you try to apply any psychology. So we'll talk a little bit about that. So do you flight, fight, or freeze? Drop in the chat and tell me, have you heard of flight, fight, freeze? Does this sound familiar? Or maybe you kind of heard of it, but you don't really understand that. Understanding how our anxiety manifests gives us a deeper understanding into our unique anxiety responses. Now, sometimes we can do all three. It's not like we consciously choose, oh, today I'm going to freeze instead of fight, but we typically have a default mode. Actually, all of us have a default mode. And in that default mode, you'll kind of, your body, your mind will go into this default mode. It's like a secondary non-conscious mode that you're going to go into when your anxiety has been activated. So what you're trying to do is identify the behaviors as they happen, so you understand, where am I in the anxiety cycle? Anxiety is a cycle. Think of it as a bell curve. It's most people see the behaviors, or they feel uncomfortable when they're at the top of the bell curve, but you've been triggered all along the way somehow, right? And so the faster we can identify those triggers coming in, we can kind of soften that bell curve, so we're not having such a visceral anxiety response. So looking at, oh, is this flight behavior? Is this fright behavior? Is this freeze behavior? It's great to help you understand, how am I behaving? Because then when the anxiety is over, you can look back and say, what were the triggers leading up to this? That's going to give you the awareness you need to build that distress tolerance that I was talking about a little bit ago. I'm used to fight, flight, or freeze. Yeah, exactly, right? We've got I fawn. It depends on the situation, right? But we've heard of it. This is good. Fawn is there too. I kind of look as I think that fawn and freeze, they're very much alike. And so for the purpose of just keeping this simple, I went with the big three, but there is a fawn too. So how it manifests, look at some of these behaviors and see, can this apply to you, or have you done this before? So somebody who is in fight mode, right? They're ready to battle. They are ready to go to the mats, right? So if you've seen children have an anxiety response and they're screaming and they're kicking, you're like, what is going on with this child? They're just screaming and kicking, and they're throwing their fists in the air, and they're clawing at the air, and, glaring and all that stuff, pushing, spitting, all that good stuff. They're in fight mode, right? That's how their anxiety is being manifested through their behavior. So look at that. If you are someone that wants to scream, you want to punch a wall, you want to flip that car off that just cut you off, and all of that, and you feel like this physical, visceral reaction, you probably default into fight. And that's your, so you can look at that, is my heart rate increasing right now? Am I raising my voice? Am I tensing my muscles? Am I ready to scream? And do I want to punch the hole into the wall, right? When you feel these things, this behavior, this is where you can have that aha moment of, oh, here's this anxiety, right? This is how this is manifesting, right? Flight, ready to flee. This is the girl, I'm out. Bye. Like, no, thank you. I need to get out of here, right? So, like when I work with parents and children, and their children don't want to go to school, they get to school and they start crying and screaming and they want to go home. It's usually because they're in flight. They're trying to get out of school. They're trying to get out of trigger, right? So you could probably feel this if you have a lot of anxiety at work and you get to work, you're like, I just need to get out of here. Oh my gosh, right? That can be a flight response. Darting of eyes, right? If you have seen somebody that you love have anxiety response and they couldn't, make eye contact with you, darting of eyes, that can be an indication that they're in an anxiety place, right? Oh, this person's anxiety. That means their smart brain's offline. Okay, so now I can intervene differently, right? Restlessness, if you're just like, oh gosh, I just have all this pent up energy and I just, you're fidgeting and that type of stuff. That is a flight response. Leaving situations, getting up and getting out of here, right? Leaving school, leaving work, what if you get into a fight with somebody, you're somebody who gets in the car and goes, right? That is a flight response. Alertness, you're on alert, you're on high alert. When you get on high alert, things happen in your visual system. You start to get really focused, but you lose some of your peripheral vision because your visual system is looking for direct threats. So you're going to get very clear vision, but you won't have clear vision about everything. It's very pinpointed, very focused vision. Increased heart rate, of course, and running away. So if let's say that you have, again, going back to parenting, because it's the easiest way to talk about this, is if you have a kiddo that's running away, right? Like, why is my child running away? This is why. It's a manifestation of anxiety. It's their flight response. Freeze, holding, which is ready to shut down, like whoosh, freeze, holding your breath, shallow breathing. So if you're not taking those deep breaths, you're shutting down. You're just like, I can't, right? If your head goes down and you're done, that's a freeze response. Withdrawing can be a freeze response. How many people have isolated or withdrawn when things got tough? A lot of people did it, and are doing it recently, right? Because of the pandemic. If you feel like you're unable to move, like you just like I think of it as being stuck in mud, right? Your limbs are heavy, you just don't feel like you can move. Your heart rate actually will decrease and freeze. Daydreaming, you just check out, you zone out. Those are freeze responses. So what does this look like in the world, right? So I always use this little analogy, the story of the gazelle. And so why we have anxiety is our threat detection system. So we have this amygdala, and in this amygdala, we have this, we call a sentient or threat detection system. Now, because of the way that we have evolved, we have carried that threat detection system with us, but we don't have the circumstances that we used to have back in caveman days. So our bodies have not, our amygdalas, our brains have not evolved to where we are now in present day. So we're still using behaviors and we still have these reactions like we are running from a threat. So think of a gazelle, right? You can see a gazelle running from a lion. In the savannah, gazelle is running from a lion. The gazelle has three choices. It's either going to fight back, it's either going to get brave and it's going to be like, you know what? I can't outrun this lion, so I'm going to fight. I'm going to go down fighting. So the gazelle is going to fight, or the gazelle is going to flight. It's going to try to outrun the lion, and hopefully it does, right? I don't want to be food, so it runs, or it freezes. So when you see something play dead, like a gazelle will run and then play dead and hope that the lion goes off and gets the other lions because it thinks it's going to eat with the pack. And when it comes back, the gazelle gets up, or as soon as the lion goes, gazelle gets up, boing, and takes off, right? So there's freeze. So this is how this looks in the world, how it manifests. So cues for body cues for anxiety, right? Going and checking in. I was kind of talking earlier about nervous system first. If you're feeling anxious, I want you to Number one, stop talking to yourself like you can just talk yourself out of this. Your nervous system's been activated, whether you like it or not. And that activation is non-conscious, and our consciousness isn't going to be enough to get us out of that state unless we're intentional about getting ourselves out of that state or waiting it out. And waiting it out, I mean, why would anybody want to do that, right? Because it's not a comfortable feeling. And if you don't have to, then I encourage you not to, right? So how do I start knowing when anxiety is coming on? What are my cues? Hot flashes or chills. Insomnia. If you're losing sleep, that is a biggie. Urge to use the bathroom. This is one that's really common that people don't talk about, but if all of a sudden you're like, oh, I've got to pee, and then 5 minutes later, I got to pee again, I know, not sexy, but if some of you are going, oh my gosh, I do that, that can be a manifestation from anxiety. Tense muscles, constant exhaustion, heartburn, right? Maybe you're suffering from heartburn. You're like, I don't know, it came on, I've just been stressed out. That could be an anxiety response. So look at this list and tell me, drop in the chat if you feel brave. Do any of these body cues ring true for you? Have you noticed that you have one of these symptoms and body cues of anxiety that you are green, the light bulb's going on for you, like, oh, feeling nauseous. I didn't think that was an anxiety response before, but you know what? Maybe it is, right? We're starting to gain that awareness of how the body and the mind are connected. Muscle tension, yes. Oh my gosh, clench jaw, shoulders. And it's hard too, because most of us are in front of screens all day. So we just kind of tend to blame it on, well, I'm sitting in front of my computer all day. But that may not be the full case. A lot of us can sit in front of our computers and not have that muscle ache and tension, right? So well done, Victoria, for identifying that. I love it, right? Sharing is caring. So start to look at this and go, wow, I've been getting a lot of migraines. It might not just be stress. This may be anxiety. You may have been kicked up a notch into the anxiety bucket. The amygdala. So what is this almond shaped little thing in our limbic system, the back of our brain here, near our caveman older brain? What is the amygdala? Like I said, it's in the limbic system, which is the older part of our brain. And it does two things. Number one, it regulates emotions. So it helps us, it figure out what the threat is. It helps us, work through that threat. Do I have to run for my life? What do I have to do? So it helps us regulate that response. And it also gives emotional meaning to things. So when you make memories and you tie emotions to those memories, that's your amygdala. So let's, think of who here has eaten food that they don't like, and they absolutely hate, you could share that food in the chat. Like, what food, when I say, Brussels sprouts, you go, oh, right? You have this reaction. That's emotional meaning. Our brains are making emotional meaning. So the amygdala creates that emotional meaning to that thing, and then it shares it with the hippocampus, which makes a memory. And that's how we start to store memories. So the amygdala plays a key role in how we assess and respond to environmental threats. And the challenges by it evaluates the emotional importance of the information that we have coming to us, and that prompts the response. So think of the amygdala as your filter. It's your filter that everything's going through to check, is this a threat? Am I okay? What's this information that's coming at me? How do I have a proper response to that? That's the job of the amygdala, right? And that's exactly what's getting activated when we're feeling anxious. So again, very important to remember, just in our limbic system, it's part of our older part of our brain. It helps us regulate those emotions, that sensory information, and gives meaning to things, right? So triggers and tolerance. What are our triggers? Anxiety just doesn't come on because it's Tuesday, right? We all have triggers. There's something happening to us that is then putting us on that bell curve trajectory. So sometimes it can be many triggers, right? It can be this, that, I woke up and stubbed my toe. Then I spilled coffee all over myself. Then I was late to work. Then my boss said that they needed an emergency meeting. Then I get a call and my kid's sick at school, so I have to go pick them up. And now my boss is going to be mad because I have to cancel the emergency meeting because I have to go pick up my kid. You see how all that becomes part of that bell curve. So by the time you get to that bell curve, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, I have to go pick up my kid. And you may think that your kid being sick is the trigger because you're stressed out about the meeting and the boss. But it's a combination of all those things that have happened that brought you to a threshold, right? A limit on top of that bell curve, where then boom, the anxiety gets unleashed. Your amygdala goes into threat. Then you start to feel these physical body cues. Then you're going to start exhibiting these behaviors of flight, fight, freeze, depending on what's going on and how you react to that. And that's all stemming from those triggers. So most people will look at that one, they'll, kind of be like, oh, this one thing happened to me. But if you start tracking your triggers, which I highly recommend everybody does, start tracking your day. What happened to you? What's happening to you in your day, right? You're probably going to start to see a story evolve. And it's going to be like, oh, well, this happened and I started to feel a little stressed. And then this happened and I started to feel a little stressed. And then this happened, I was way more stressed out. And then this happened and I blew my top. But I can see now that there were multiple things happening that were triggering me. Humans have 5 triggers. We have 5 things that we are triggered by emotionally. So if we look at these triggers, survival, right? Abandonment, impotence, justice, things of that nature. And oh my gosh, I just blanked on the last one. Let's see. Abandonment, impotence. I'll remember it in just a bit. But we have these 5 triggers. And when we look at the things that are triggering, you can start to connect them to, shame. There we go. I knew you can start to connect it to, is this a shame trigger being activated? Is this an abandonment trigger being activated? Is this a survival trigger being activated? Impotence is really a very common trigger. And all triggers have their antidote, their counterpart. So if I was to look at my day and I was looking at all the things that happened to me during that day, I would start to, like you said, get that story and go, okay, now I have an awareness. I have an awareness of what's happening. I'm starting to understand and map my behaviors. This is going to empower you to handle your anxiety. Once you become mindful of it, if you're mindful of these emotional and physical sensations of anxiety, then you can activate the antidote, right? But you can't do that if you don't understand what's triggering you. So trigger work is so, so important. I do it all the time with my clients. We identify those triggers. I cannot stress enough how important this is. If you want to tackle your anxiety, you've got to know your triggers. You've got to know what's stepping on your gas, right? Because you're in a car that's out of control when you're in anxiety. When you're in that space, the car is driving regardless if your foot's on the gas or not. So to make sure that you're the one in control of that car, you've got to understand what those triggers or road bumps are that are causing you to become dysregulated, that is causing your stress to get that stress response to get so overloaded that you go into anxiety, right? So we want to look at the triggers. If I'll take that woman again. She's at the bell curve. Her, kid calls sick. She has to go to her boss and say, I'm so sorry. The school just called. My daughter's sick. I have to go pick her up. And the boss goes, fine, go. And she walks out of there like, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. Oh my gosh. Has anybody been in this situation before where they've had a boss who just was not kind, right? Yes, exactly. And so she is walking out of work and she's going, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm flags, her heart rate increases. She feels like she can't breathe. Her mind is racing. Her muscles start tensing. She's starting to feel nauseous, right? She's in anxiety because her survival trigger has been activated. I'm going to lose my job. If I lose my job, I can't take care of my family financially. If I can't take care of my family financially, we're going to be homeless. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be homeless on the street. This is where the mind goes. It goes down these rabbit holes. So her survival trigger has been activated. And to deactivate that trigger, we use antidotes, right? So when our survival trigger has been activated, we need a sense of control, right? We need a sense of semblance. If our shame has been activated, we need to have some compassion. If our abandonment triggers have been activated, we need to feel connection, right? So looking at whatever trigger, and potent is, so it's about control. So that is really about control. So I'll give you a perfect example, right? And many parents have been through this. I'm picking on kids today. I don't know what, poor kids. If you've ever seen a teenager play video games, right? Kid comes home from school, drops their backpack down, goes and starts playing video games. Homework needs to be done, chores need to be done. So mom comes in and says, hey, Johnny, you have chores to do. Do you have homework to do? And Johnny's like, yeah, mom, I'm just going to get it in a minute. And she goes, no, I need you to turn off the video games right now and do your chores. At that point, Johnny goes, I just want to play my video game, mom. Just give me 5 minutes. That activates the anxiety response. Why? Because he didn't have control over his time. He was being told, directed to do something, and now he's been activated, right? So when we look at that scenario, what mom could have done differently is said, hey, Johnny, I know that you probably had a long day and you need to decompress. So how long do you think that you need to play video games for until you to calm down, so then you can do your chores and any homework that you may have? Now I have control. I've offered control. So Johnny can say, can I have like 15 minutes? Sure. Totally avoided, right? So it's associated with control. Yes. Lack of power. Exactly. So it's anytime that you feel disempowered, impotence, that antidote is empowerment, right? So looking at those things really can now give you some framework, like, okay, why do I react this way? Anybody that's had anxiety and they went, why did I do this? Like when you calm down, you're like, I was like screaming like a lunatic, or, oh, my partner was just trying to have a conversation with me and I totally shut down. Right. And now I feel bad. And if your shame trigger then gets activated by that, you're like, now I'm a bad person, I'm a bad partner, I'm a bad spouse, I'm a bad, going down that rabbit hole, right? What that shame needs is compassion, self-compassion in that moment, to say, no, you're not a bad person. You just were having an anxiety response to perceived threat, the conversation, regardless if it was going to be a bad or good conversation. Our amygdala does not know the difference. Our amygdala does not make the decision that this is, it makes only the decision, is this a perceived threat? So if any level I feel like I don't know what's about to happen, it's going to be a perceived threat. It's just very primitive. Yes, no, right? Gas brake. So we look at these triggers, we look at our behaviors, we look at, what is making us feel this way. And what we want to do to help combat anxiety is build tolerance, what they call distress tolerance. But tolerance to these big emotions. A lot of anxiety gets created from the sense of unknown or lack of control. And so if we feel like we're struggling, that we're not comfortable with the unknown, the gray area, that can feel very unsettling, right? Going back to that can be hitting a survival trigger. So a critical piece of the anxiety management is building that distress tolerance, becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? And it can be a long and tedious process. I'm not here to say that there is a 5-second cure for anxiety. I am not here to say that, but when you walk away from this presentation, you're going to be like, I've got my anxiety managed for life, right? I will give you some cool tools though, but this can be a process. So be gracious with yourself depending on how severe your anxiety is and how long you've been dealing with it. If you've been dealing with your anxiety your whole life and now you're just going, okay, I'm listening to you, Kimberly, I got to figure out these triggers, you might, be surprised. It may be a process. So give yourself grace through this process as you're digging up or uncovering this stuff, right? But, what you need to do is set yourself up for the best chance of success in the long term, right? Life is going to be full of triggers and uncertain situations. We all collectively just came out of a big uncertain situation, right? Oh my gosh. So that set the table right there for a lot of people who had not felt anxiety before to feel anxiety, this unknown, right? What we're trying to do is guide ourselves to a better understanding of what's going on in here and in here so we can be successful, right? That's what we want to do. We want to feel better. So, couple
Kimberly,
cool tools.
can I ask a question?
Yes.
Because I was looking at Dee's comments, and she says for her, it's coworkers trying to stay away from conflicts that may lead to a loss of a job. And also with that example that you had provided earlier, where the woman had to leave the office and the boss is like, oh, okay. I'm wondering if there is often more than one trigger that activates. Like it could be survival, but could it also be shame? Could it
Yes.
also be something, or like maybe the woman who had to leave was like, okay, I might lose my job, or else it was like, oh my God, I'm so ashamed that I have to take care of this and my boss doesn't really think I can handle it. And that was a passive aggressive way of responding. So, and
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it could be like a
typically,
control thing too. Yeah.
yeah. So typically, I mean, you can have a couple triggers go off at once, but what I found is that if you really dig deep, there is a default trigger. There's usually a main baddie in there
Okay.
poking at it because yes, I feel this shame. Oh my gosh, I can't, oh, I'm the worst coworker ever. There's shame, but if survival is going there and it's saying, yeah, you feel bad because you're going to lose your job, because you're going to be homeless, everything. If you root that down, that's actually a survival trigger, right? So things can start to kind of pop up and you can work through that by going, okay, I'm going to ask myself these questions, am I really a bad employee? No, I'm not. I'm dealing with life, but what's really fueling this? Well, I'm really scared I'm going to lose my job. Okay, so what happens if I lose my job? Right. So that kind of circles back. So there can be, two that pop up, especially like if you feel your impotence trigger and your justice triggers being activated. A lot of us feel that when we look at some of the stuff in the world that is happening that may be against our value system. So that justice trigger is really about our value systems. And that's all about the antidote for that is letting go and shifting perspectives, right? So we look at that. And so we could be activated by that trigger. But what really is troubling us is we don't feel like we can make a change and we don't have control over it. And that's really like it's the gas break of it all. But that's a great question because you can keep digging on your feelings. There's no right or wrong answer. You'll get to the answer that you need to if you're asking yourself the right questions.
And so my follow-up question is, you were saying that there's an antidote for each of these, and you mentioned connection was the antidote for abandonment. Control is the antidote for impotence, and then compassion is the antidote for shame. And I didn't get survival and justice, what those antidotes are, or are they just
survival? So survival is going to be control, and impotence is going to be empowerment. And you got shame, and then
justice?
for justice is letting go. So letting go of the situation or a shift and change in perspective.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Perfect. And I'm going to do a Q&A at the end, everybody else. So so don't worry. I'm kind of watching the time to make sure that we have time to answer questions too at the end. We're almost there. We'll get, because I wanted to give a lot of time for Q&A because I know sometimes like these beautiful questions come up and I want to talk it out. So tools for anxiety. These are things that you can implement in your life today. Now, some of these are focused on the nervous system, and some of these are focused on the psychology, right? Cold exposure. Cold exposure is awesome. In DBT, they have this thing called TIP, and this is kind of like using one of those DBT skills, cold exposure. And there's a lot of different ways that you can get cold exposure, but what we see is it deactivates the nervous system. It actually creates vasal constriction. The cold does, and so that slows down heart rate, that can calm our bodies down. So there's some physiological benefits from cold exposure. So what does that look like? Well, you can do cold exposure in the shower. So this is awesome. You don't have to do this when you're anxiety. This is actually also preventative. So when you're in the shower, you want to turn it just cold enough to feel uncomfortable, but not cold enough to harm yourself. And you'll stand in that, depending on your threshold and tolerance, for 30 seconds to a minute and a half. You don't want to go beyond a minute and a half. That's too, you're not taking an ice bath, but you're exposing yourself to cold. Or you can go outside and stand in the cold for 10 minutes. I do that every morning. I go outside, unless it's pouring down rain and I can't find shelter, but I'll go out there and I'll just let myself feel, at that point where I'm chilly, I'm cold. And I also get direct sun exposure as well, daylight exposure. But that cold exposure can be just as simple as, doing a little bit of cold water in the shower, going outside when it's cold, or if you're having this anxiety response or you're possibly going into a panic attack, grab and hold an ice cube. I remember one time I was having an anxiety attack and I went and grabbed an ice cube, and that ice cube melted in my hand and steam was coming off of that ice cube because my body temperature had risen so high that it melted that ice cube like almost immediately, and steam was coming off of it. I was shocked. So hold some ice cubes, you can just stand over the sink. They can melt into the sink. There's no cleaning it up, but get in contact with cold. That is going to be one of your tools that you can use today to help you with your anxiety. Ice, cold shower, stepping outside in the cold air. Those will help you. The physiological side. I know breath work is all the rage right now, which is great. Breath work is important, but different breath and breathing techniques do different things for your body. So what does that mean? Some breath work actually speeds up your heart rate and some does not. Some actually slows your heart rate. So how do you know which? Anything that any breath work that you use that you're exhaling longer will slow down your heart rate. Anything that you're inhaling longer will speed up your heart rate. So you see that a lot of people be like, and what you're actually doing is increasing your heart rate. So we want to exhale. The physiological side, there's tons of information out there. You can go and Google it. You're going to see a lot of studies on this. You're going to see a lot of great information. It's very easy to do. You're going to do 2 quick inhales and a long exhale. And you'll do that 3 to 15 times, depending on where you're at in your anxiety, right? You don't want to overdo it because that becomes a different type of breathing. That is intentional hyperventilation. So you want to be really careful that you're not hyperventilating or doing Wim Hof breathing. This is different. So it's kind of like going along those lines, but we have a cutoff point. So you don't want to do more than 15 reps or cycles of this. But this looks like, so you can do this with me. No one's looking at you on the camera. I'm on the camera, and you can do it with me. And you want to make sure that exhale is long, nice and long, because what you're doing is you're pushing out all your carbon dioxide. So that's going to help reduce your blood flow, lower down your heart rate. It's really, really great for any time that you are in an anxious, panic moment. You can do this, just quick, 5, right? Or you can do it preventatively. This is a great tool if you are about to, let's say, work on something that's going to be challenging. Let's say that you have that meeting with the boss and you have to go pick, you had to go into the meeting with the boss. The kid wasn't sick, but you're kind of like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? Do this breathing. Anytime that you think you're going to be walking into a situation where there's tension, do this breathing 3 to 5 reps before you walk into that situation. It will help you. It will decrease your heart rate, eliminate CO2, and it just gives you a moment to center down, right? And that's really important. Affirmations and mantras. Yes, there is science behind these. It's not just woo-woo, my friends. Affirmations and mantras, a lot of people are familiar with them. If you're not, again, your friend Google can give you some great information. When I'm working with my clients, we always focus on I am affirmations, because I am very powerful words that we use, and anything that comes after I am is what you are, right? So we want to make sure that we're creating an identity intentionally that sets us up for success. And this is what we start doing with these identity changes, these behavioral changes, knowing our triggers, shifting, all that good stuff. We can have a mantra affirmation. So when I was going through some very high anxiety during the beginning of the pandemic, my mantra was, I'm okay, it's okay. I'm okay, it's okay. So when I started to feel anxiety, I went, I'm okay, it's okay. I'm okay, it's okay. And I would repeat it until I noticed my breathing starting to slow, my body posture shifting down. I could feel a sense of calming. So I would just repeat it on lock until it calmed me down. So we can use these to shift our identity, but we can also have a special mantra or affirmation. So if you are feeling anxiety, it takes you down, it centers you, it kind of brings you back to this wonderful prefrontal cortex, this really mature brain. We want to get this back online. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to shift out of our amygdala brain, out of our limbic system, back into our prefrontal cortex. Another thing that's really great, especially if you're with people that are having an anxiety attack, one of the things that can really activate the prefrontal cortex once it goes offline, you want to get back online, ask questions and be curious. Not like repetitive question answer, but be like, wow, it seems like you're feeling anxious right now. Is that right? Yeah. Tell me what does that feel like for you? And then they have to start answering. And this brings this back online. So we can be skillful with the questions we answer or we ask those loved ones to try to bring them out, right? Not to validate that trigger, not to keep them in that response, but to bring them out of that response. Anxiety do's and don'ts. I love a good cheat sheet. Do's. Try breathing to calm the body down, slow down that reaction. We just talked about the psychological sigh, which is different than box breathing. Box breathing is that, it's usually the same, you're going to take a breath in for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. That's called box breathing. So that's, what we're trying to do is reduce heart rate. We're trying to slow our body down. So we want to use that psychological sigh. We want to connect eye to eye with your person, possible hug them. So some people, their love language is physical touch. So if you have a special person in your life, a safe person, if you're having anxiety, go to them, connect with them, get a hug from them, get that touch from them. We all know the power of a good hug. I mean, I'm talking this 10-second hug, not just a bro pat hug, right? We're a nice deep hug from your safe, trusted person. Run your mantra, your affirmation that is really specific to anxiety. I'm okay. I am strong. I am grounded. I am in the moment, right? Kind of bringing you back to present. Use a grounding technique, right? Tune in to 4 things that you can see around you that brings you back down into your body. 3 things you can touch, 2 that you can smell, and 1 that you can taste, right? So this again kind of starts to bring this prefrontal cortex back online, because we're using curiosity, asking questions, which is what it likes to do, answer questions, bring it back online. Don't try to control a situation or suggest that somebody needs to get over it. I'm sure none of you have, or maybe you have in the past and you just didn't know because you didn't know what to do when you saw somebody responding that way, or you didn't understand the seriousness of anxiety. I know that's true. A lot of people tend to think, oh, it's just anxiety, brush it off, you'll be fine. That, people just can't get over this. Remember, your nervous system is online. It takes, on average, 20 to 60 minutes to calm the nervous system down. So you can't just snap out of it. Your body literally has to slow down. You have to be intentional about looking at that nervous system and making some changes to slow that whole system down. If you have children, don't use consequences or punishments to change their response in the moment. A lot of parents do this. Like, okay, Johnny, you're not going to be able to, play these video games if you don't XYZ right now. If I take you from school and you come home, you're grounded, right? So don't use consequences or punishment in the moment. It's not going to change the behavior. It's just not. Don't validate the trigger. This can be something too. If you love somebody or it's yourself, you can start to ruminate on that trigger, whatever those triggers were. If you're there with somebody, like let's say that you have a partner who has anxiety, don't validate the trigger. Don't be like, yeah, oh God, that's the worst. Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry that your boss is so mean. Oh, worst, right? We may be thinking that we're kind of helping, we're trying to show camaraderie, but what we may be inadvertently doing is empowering and validating that trigger. We also don't want to invalidate their feelings and tell somebody that they're overreacting. Don't tell somebody to calm down, right? Don't be like, oh, just calm down, girl. No, right? Has anybody been ever told in their life that they just needed to calm down? Drop in the chat with an emoji if someone's ever just told you to calm down, right? You're like, if I could, I would, right? Because none of us want to feel that we're out of control, right? Yes. Don't catastrophize the situation. And this is a big one, right? This one, we could tend to do, again, trying to be in camaraderie with somebody, that we blow up the situation, or we go to worst case scenario in our own head, right? That woman that I was talking about earlier, she went from having to leave work early, leave her boss, to being homeless on the street with her children, right? She could catastrophize it. She's going into worst case scenario. So we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. And if we see that we are going there, right, we have to intentionally pull ourselves back, like, oh God, how did I become homeless in 5 seconds? Okay, I need to do my physiological sigh. I need to go hold some ice. I need to run my mantra. I need to go get a hug, so I can slow my body reaction down, or do my grounding technique, right? So kind of look at these. Okay, this, the don'ts is really about, what we're going to try to avoid, right, going forward, these behaviors going forward, or become aware of these. Because if you're doing these things, now you have awareness, right? Knowledge is power. So there you go. Proactive skills, really quickly here.
Kimberly has a question. She's got her hand raised. Would you mind?
Oh, hey, Nikki, I will get to you in just a few moments. When I open Q&A, I will go to you first, my dear. So perfect. And we're almost there. Proactive skills, sleep and sunlight exposure. Sleep hygiene is critical to managing your anxiety. These are the proactive things. These are foundational to help you reset your body and reduce your baseline level of anxiety, right? That's tolerance. How much can I tolerate before I completely melt down? Well, sleep is the number one thing you can do. Make sure you have a sleep routine. Make sure you have good sleep hygiene. No screens and lights from 10 to 4. Don't sleep with your electronics in your room. Give yourself a routine, so you start to signal to your body that it's time to go to bed. So, you can do that and get good quality sleep. Sunlight exposure. Well, I'm somebody in the Pacific Northwest. We don't get a whole lot of sunlight nowadays, but even when it's overcast, still go out and look at the sun. So upon 30 minutes of waking, go outside for 10 to 30 minutes, depending on how much time you have, and just let your visual system get the sunlight, get the UV rays. Why? It's resetting your hormonal signals to time your melatonin release. Our bodies release melatonin naturally, and by supplementing with melatonin, we actually throw our body's ability to produce its melatonin off. So what we want to do is we want to reset our biological systems to do what it does naturally. So within 30 minutes of waking, get out, see that sunlight, make sure that, you know, you're out there for about 10 minutes, and then it's going to kind of start this cascade of hormonal reactions that's going to release melatonin at the right time. So you can start getting sleep, you know, in about 12 hours to 8 to 12 hours or after seeing that sunlight. And if you really want the piece de resistance, then during dusk, you'll do the same thing. You'll go out in the sunlight for 10 to 30 minutes as well, right? So those are two critical things to do. You can find me online. You can email me. You can follow me on Instagram or check out my website, Coach with Kimberly. And now it is a Ask Me Anything. Da, 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 da. So I want to open this up to Q&A. So go ahead and raise your hand. And I will answer questions in the order that they received. Nikki, do you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, dear?
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was awesome. So I have a quick question. I was diagnosed with MS at 24 years old. So I'm healing myself holistically, so not with medication. And so I've already worked through my triggers and my anxiety and depression a lot already just with that alone. But a big issue I have is I'm very good at regulating myself on my own, but around my family, they have always been my number one trigger. And 99.9% of what comes out of their mouth is something that's triggering me. And I've mentioned many times, like I've done breathing exercises before. My mom's actually got mad at me and is like, why are you doing breathing exercises? What's wrong? What's making you stressed? I'm like, okay, I'm trying to literally calm myself down right now. And you're literally attacking me even more for trying to calm myself down. And I just feel like when I'm with them, it's such a toxic cycle of like, even when I'm trying to calm myself down, they take it in a negative way because they're very narcissistic. So they don't want to admit that they are causing me any pain or stress. Yeah. So how would you recommend to go about this? Because they are not in a place where I can tell them, hey, this triggers me, or hey, can we maybe not do this? They're not really in that place. So I need to do everything on my own. I can't depend on anyone else.
Yeah. And I mean, that's a really good point, Nikki. I think that that's actually the point, is that we can't rely on our external environment to regulate us at any given moment. Right. So, you know, and I think this is a complicated question, because if we're talking about narcissists and reactions with narcissists, that's another huge discussion. What I would, in that situation, what I would recommend is, going to the bathroom, excusing yourself, going to the bathroom so nobody has to see you, and doing your physiological sigh and running your mantra. And so, you're doing that work, do the prep work. If you know you're going into a kind of that toxic environment, prep yourself, make sure that your baseline anxiety levels are low, right? Our baseline changes, it's not stagnant. So what we can tolerate over time, we can tolerate more or less depending on the work that we put in, right? So think about, okay, I've got my cold exposure, I've got my sunlight, I've had good sleep, I have, I have done, I have my mantra, I have my physiological sigh locked and loaded. I do before I go there. I can use it when I'm there, and really kind of pull upon your tools to help get you through that situation. But the prep work that you would need to do to reduce that overall anxiety, stress baseline before you go is, I think, going to be your sweet spot. So getting yourself as calm, cool, and collected before you walk out the door into that situation is going to be helpful. And when you're there, if you feel like it's overload, excuse yourself, go into the bathroom and do your physiological sigh, run your mantra, calm the body down. Remember, go to your nervous system first. You want to calm down the biology before you apply the psychology. Hopefully that helps.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, I also want to mention because it looks like Victoria might be dealing with the same thing too. So it might be a bit of a topic. And knowing, I think it brings us all back to our childhoods when we all felt disempowered by our families. I think that that is
Mhm.
a very, very common thing. And it's frustrating and it's maddening. And I just wonder if there is a way that the communication can be more real with the families. It's like, especially when you've got MS, you've been diagnosed, and you've got, extenuating circumstances where, the extent of your disability could also be impacting, a lot of things in your life. And if there's not this sensitivity or compassion to your situation, then yeah, it's tough. And they might not be amenable to having a nice sit down, heart to heart conversation where they can receive and be in a place where they can actually hear the pain that you're in every time that something is being said. But that is the hope. That's the biggest desire. And if there's an intermediary, if you could do family counseling or something like that, where everybody can get together and they can really see that this is not helping you. And if they really
Yeah.
want you to thrive, if they really care for your happiness, if they really, are considerate of others, then, everybody can do some soul searching and some self-reflection to see how they are impacting others. And we can do the
I
same
think,
thing.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the hard part, Jen, is, if she truly is a narcissist, that actually can put Nikki at risk, right? So, narcissists they don't take responsibility for their behavior, and they don't have the compassion, right? True narcissism, not just my mom is an asshole, but true narcissists lack empathy, right? So if her mom truly is narcissistic, she's not going to have the empathy for the heart to heart. So it's, what can Nikki do within Nikki, right? Regardless of what's going to happen, regardless if maybe some of these relationships are healthy for me and I should be in them, or maybe I need to reduce how much exposure I get to these people or whatnot. That's why I said this is really, really layered, and the narcissism puts a whole other spin on it, because there becomes a safety thing, right? Because their primary job is to make sure their ego does not get hurt, right? It's all very low self-esteem based. So that's what their behaviors are. So if Nikki is taking care of herself and they're not taking care of themselves, what is that reflecting, right? That's why I can speculate that that's probably the part of the defense mechanism is like, who do you think you are, right? So, Nikki, keep doing, what you're doing. I think it's great. And that's why I kind of lean heavily on, this is truly a narcissist that you're dealing with. There's some great books. Loving a Narcissist is out there, and that's really a great resource. And, I just wish you all the luck, but I would say just be careful. Narcissists don't tend to change. So having an expectation that you'll get what you need from them, it's an expectation that you may be setting yourself up for hurt in the long run. So just from a safety perspective, just be careful about that. Thank you so much. My situation is exactly like you said. Main reason for the development of no accountability. I've been in family therapy for 10 years. Exactly. They get offended. Yes, because their ego is very, very fragile. Low self-esteem is the primary driver of narcissism. So, when you're dealing with somebody who is not going to take accountability, who's going to gaslight you and is going to protect themselves at all cost, you're dealing with somebody who's not going to have empathy for your feelings, right? So you've got to put yourself first, and and ask yourself some questions about those relationships and how much exposure you may or may not want, right? And I can go down a rabbit hole for that. I did a podcast episode on narcissists that was really great. So if anybody wants to check that out, it's the Being Unnormal podcast, and it's a whole masterclass on narcissism. So yeah, it's hard. Is there any other questions before I kind of give you back your day? I am here to ask questions. And, Victoria, hang in there, sweet pea. My hats off to you. I was in a relationship with a narcissist. It was 3 months of short-lived, badly damaged stuff. How fast it happens is unreal. So I was grateful that I got out in 3 months, but there was severe damage in the wake. So I feel you ladies with all my heart on that.
So
Oh,
it's
there goes my dogs.
no worries. Yeah. So it's essentially trying to minimize exposure, surrounding yourself with people who are more empathetic and less toxic so that you can have real conversations with and know that it's not your fault, right? Know that that trigger is their issue and that it's really like, let's feel sorry for them or let's, have compassion for them because, this is definitely an issue with them and not you, Nikki, or not you, Victoria, right?
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, I'm going to give you back your day because it's been an hour. I want to thank you all for being here. Anybody who's listening on the replay, thank you so much for signing up for this workshop. So if you, took something away from this, and feel free to get in contact if you have questions and you want to do it on the down low. I'm totally happy to talk to you. You can get a hold of me at hellocoachkimberly@gmail.com. And I'm always happy to have a conversation with you there or coachwithkimberly.com. So I will let Jen take it away and close us out.
Yes, thank you so very much, Kimberly, for all of that information. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I feel really enthusiastic about our ability to have some tools to handle stress and anxiety when it comes on. I encourage everybody to stay connected and definitely look us up for those future events. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.